We're going to go over the end of module assessment for mission 4. So you will need a colored pencil. As we go through this, if you got one wrong, you're going to fix the answers in your colored pencil. If you got it right, you're going to put +1 beside it. And then we'll count those up at the very end. All right, so let's look at these. Look at number 1. It said, find and draw all the lines of symmetry in the following figures. If there are none, write none. Remember that a line of symmetry means that you can fold it on that line and the two sides are identical. So in this triangle, two sides are the same. It's a scalene triangle. It only has one line of symmetry. Anywhere else, it would be off. This is a parallelogram. It's like a rectangle that no longer has right angles. It's been moved, so it has none. This triangle had 3 equal sides, so it has 3 lines of symmetry right down the middle from each of the vertexes. So if you turn your triangle, you should be able to see that you could have folded it right on that line again. Okay? If you got them right, put a +1 right beside it. If you got it wrong, fix it. So that means, let's say you put 2 lines of symmetry in here. Then just draw with the colored pencil the 1 line of symmetry. If you only put 1 line of symmetry on this, draw in the other ones. Only give yourself the point if you got it correct. All right, this square, all 4 sides are the same, 4 right angles. It can get folded down the middle, vertically, down the middle horizontally, and then across both corners. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of symmetry. Remember to only count 1 line from start to finish, a line segment. From one triangle to the, or from one corner to the other, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. This triangle has no lines of symmetry because it doesn't have any hash marks to show you that they're the same, that the sides are the same. And this rectangle has just 2 lines of symmetry. All right, let's look at the next one. We're going to classify our triangles. So look at triangle A. How many sides are the same? 2. So that means it is an isosceles triangle, and it had 1 obtuse angle. If you're not sure about that, you need to check each angle. Be sure to turn it around. So you can see right here, if you put your pencil or your finger or a straight edge there, that's a right angle between this line and my finger. Make it perpendicular. That angle is smaller. If I turn this way, here's my straight line, and my right angle would go straight up here, and you can still see the angle out of it. So it has an obtuse angle, so it's obtuse. Triangle C, it had 3 hash marks to show you they're all equal. So that's an equilateral triangle, and all those angles are acute. And then triangle E, it has no sides that are the same, so it's scalene. And it did have a right angle, so it's a right triangle. It doesn't matter if you put these on the opposite way. I would have written scalene and then right. It doesn't really matter. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay, so either way is fine. What about a circle? This one they didn't draw in here. I saw a lot of you drew right down the middle, right across, corners. But a circle is the same every way. So it has an infinite number of lines of symmetry. So in order to explain that right here, you should have written a circle has an infinite amount of lines of symmetry. Your sentence may be different. Now you may have written a circle has 8 lines of symmetry. Okay? If you said infinite, give yourself a +1. There's 2 questions though. It says, what point do all lines of symmetry for a given circle have in common? That means if you drew a bunch of lines of symmetry on there, where would they all cross at? Their vertex, where they cross, is all right in the middle, the center. Okay, so all lines of symmetry for a circle pass through the center point. If you said something like that, give yourself another +1. Okay, so you could have gotten 2 points on that one. turn it over to the back. Okay, now these are going to have a lot of writing on the answers, so don't get freaked out like maybe you didn't do something. I saw a lot of what you guys were doing and it looked the same. So what it's told you to figure this out without using a protractor. That means if they're telling you to figure it out without using a protractor, use what you know. A rectangle has 4 right angles. So we know in this corner, this is a right angle. It is 90 degrees. Well, they just split it. So 24 plus something plus W equals 90. When I don't know the other addend, I do the opposite. Instead of adding, I subtract. So now it's 90 minus 24 equals, you should have found that it equaled 66. If you have that answer, even if you don't have it labeled correctly, you may give yourself a +1. Okay? Number 3, part A, find the measure of D. And it says, explain how the measure of the unknown angle can be found without using a protractor. All right, so right here, anything around a point, remember when you did all those shapes and you put them together? Anything that meets around a point is a what? What shape is that? It's a circle, so it'd be 360 degrees. If you take out part of it, you'll know what you have for the rest. So if this whole circle is 360 degrees and I take out 83 degrees, am I going to add or subtract? Subtract. It equals 277 degrees. If you have 277, give yourself a +1. If you explained it, you can give yourself another +1. So however you explained it, this is how they did. A circle measures 360 degrees. If one angle is 83 degrees, the other angle is the difference. That means subtraction. You may have said something like, I know that it needed to equal 360 degrees. I subtracted 83 degrees. Anything that explains how you got your answer. All right, part B. This is a line. QRS is a line. If it were me, I would always be writing, what is that next to it? And I saw a lot of you did this. That line equals 180 degrees. So they want you to find the measure of QRT. Well, if you know that this angle plus this angle equals 180 degrees, you know that the opposite would be 180 degrees minus 58. And that should equal 122 degrees. Now, they explained it, even though it didn't ask you to. Well, actually, maybe it did. Number 3 asked you to. But you may or may not have explained it there. This one is a little bit different. I'm not looking at yours, so I can't remember if there's lines there or not. If you explained it, whether there's lines there or not, you can give yourself a +1. How did you figure it out? That's what you're explaining. I know that this angle is 122 degrees because QRS is a line and the other angle is 58 degrees. 180 minus 58 equals 122. Okay, however you explained it. All right, part C. This one, look at all that writing they have there. This one got a little bit tricky, and I think the way they did it is more work. So if you did it their way, you're just fine. But look what they told you. They said QRS is a line. So write that right here. What is it? 180 degrees. It also said PRT. They're on a line, so that's 180 degrees. Find the measure of PRS. Well, what do you know about intersecting lines? If you cover this up, what does that look like? Do you remember when we did that? Opposite angles have the same measure. So that means I have to uncover it. This and this have the same measure. This angle and this angle have the same measure. Well, they just split it. They gave you the measure. It's 74 and 48. 74 and 48. When you add that together, that equals 122. Now, they did a bunch of work because they added it together and then they just checked it, I guess, subtracted it from the 180, and then they explained a lot of this. So you could explain it like that. To me, I would say, I know that opposite angles on intersecting lines match. They gave me 48 and 74, and that equals 122. So I know angle PRS equals 122. Okay? Now look at number 4. Mike drew some two-dimensional figures. Letter A, he drew a 4-sided figure with 4 right angles, so it can only be a rectangle or a square. Look at the measurements. It's 4 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide. So are all the sides the same? No, so you know it's a rectangle, and it has 2 lines of symmetry. You can fold down the middle vertically or horizontally. Okay, letter B became a little bit hard for some people. It says he drew a quadrilateral with 4 equal sides, but no right angles. 4 equal sides with 4 right angles is a square. No right angles is a rhombus. Okay, now it says 2 lines of symmetry. I know some of you looked right here. This is not, they look close, but this is more of a rectangle. So this is a parallelogram, so it had no lines of symmetry. But a rhombus, because it has 4 equal sides, look at it if you turn it this way. What shape does that look like? A kite. I could fold it across here, horizontally, and across the middle, vertically. So it has 2 lines of symmetry. Okay? For each one, I guess I haven't been telling you that, although I told you at the beginning, for each one you get correct, give yourself a +1. So like letter A, there's 2 questions. So you could have gotten +1 for rectangle and +1 for 2 lines of symmetry. +1 for rhombus, +1 for 2 lines of symmetry. Okay? Letter C, he drew a triangle, has a right angle, and then it gave you 3 different measurements. So if it has 3 different measurements, all the sides are unequal. That means it's a scalene triangle. And since it has a right angle, it's a right triangle. And because none of the lines are the same, we know that it has no lines of symmetry. So +1 for right triangle, +1 for scalene triangle, +1 for no lines of symmetry. All right, let's look at the back. On the back, you should have drawn it using a straight edge. So yours should look like this. You may not have labeled it. If you didn't label it, but you actually measured, and you know that this is 6 centimeters, 8 centimeters, and 10 centimeters, or 8 centimeters, 6 centimeters, and then they connected with 10 centimeters, you could have switched those two. You can give yourself a +1. All right? If you did not draw it, or if you just drew it by hand and you didn't measure it, do not give yourself a point. All right? Look at this one. Mike drew this figure without using a protractor. That means figure it out. Find the sum of angle FJK, angle KJH, and angle HJG. You know all the angles around a point equal, it's like a circle, 360 degrees. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 angles listed, and they want the sum of 1, 2, 3 angles. So if it's 360 degrees and you want the sum, but you do not want to include this angle, you need to take it out. Do I add, subtract, multiply, or divide to take it out? I subtract. And I know that angle is 90 degrees. So 360 degrees minus 90 degrees equals 270. If you came up with 270, put +1. Okay? Last one. From there, it says, if FJH lie on a line, or they do lie on a line, you know that that means it's 180 degrees. What is the measure of KJH? Let's measure this one. If FJK is 45 degrees. Turn it this way. You said this is a line. This equals 180 degrees. This angle equals 45 degrees. What do you have to do? Subtract. 180 minus 45 equals 135 degrees. So you should have had some equation. You could have written this one, or you could have written 180 minus 45 equals 135. So you can have 2 points there. +1 for having the answer, and another +1 for writing an equation. Even if you wrote it opposite of this, it's still an equation that can be used to determine the angle. Now, what you're going to do is add up all your +1s. Okay, so count how many you have, and right up here at the top, you have some room. Largely, I want you to put plus how many you got correct, and then you're going to hand it in. I'm going to record those grades, and then that will go home with you so you can show your family how much you've learned about geometry.